Hi, I'm Peter, and I want to welcome you to an opening tutorial video for beginners on using OpenMusic computer-assisted composition software. This software was developed in Paris at IRCAM and has been widely used by a variety of composers for several decades now. I am a graduate student, just finishing up a master's degree, and just in this past year have begun using the software and found it tremendously helpful. There's actually a lot of documentation out there about the software, but from time to time it can be a little difficult to use, difficult to exactly find sort of the information that you're after, and oftentimes it's in French too. So thankfully I have just a really basic reading comprehension for some of the French documentation, but that can also make things a little difficult. So what I'd like to do is just give an overview about some of the ways that I've been able to use this in my own composition, and in subsequent videos begin talking more about the environment and ways of controlling the information in the visual patchers, as we'll see. So to begin with, I'll just hop over to an example. So in my studies, I've been really interested in the work of Witold Lutosławski, the Polish composer, and he had some really remarkable ways of controlling harmony in his music, and I wanted to find a way to implement some of his techniques in an OpenMusic patch for further use. So this is just an example of what I call a Ludo chart, and so this window here shows the original pitch set that I decided I wanted to work with. I pulled this from the Ravel concerto for the left hand. There's a passage that used this set, and what I wanted to be able to do is derive some further harmonies using this collection of pitches, and pick them for some very specific properties. And so what this patch does, it's kind of like a little workspace. So to begin with, it'll calculate the normal form of the set, and it'll show it in notation here. It'll calculate the interval class vector and show that here, so I can tell how many minor seconds, minor thirds, major thirds, fourths, fifths, and tritones we have going on. And then the whole rest of this is really a way that I can begin kind of narrowing down these harmonies based on specific qualities. So for example, this little patch here, this is a patch that I built. I'll double click and we can see. And some of it is very messy, and there are several different things going on, lots of different layers. But basically what it lets me do is say, okay, you're going to construct a chord that uses all 7 of these pitches. And the outer 2 most intervals should be the same. So I'll show you what I mean by that. Let's find a good example here. So like here's a good one. In this example, we have a minor 7th from G to F and a minor 7th from E to D. So that's the first pair of outer intervals that are identical. And then we have a minor 3rd going from F to what is actually an A flat, and another minor 3rd going from C sharp to E. So the second pair of intervals working our way in is also identical. And then for the rest, it kind of breaks down. On this one, I only decided to have the outer 2 most intervals be the same. So like, for example, in this chord here, the outer 2 intervals are the same. And then once we get here, they're of slightly different size. So then over here, this patch allows me to specify, and again, it's another kind of messy patch, but it allows me to specify how many intervals of a particular interval class I would like to have included in the chord. So it will filter through all the possible chord structures and keep only those that have the requisite number of interval classes. So in this case, the first interval class is IC1, so that's fourths and fifths, and they're compound intervals, of course. And I've said, oh, I don't want any of those. In this one, what I'm after is an all-interval chord. That's right, okay. So in this example, it will only allow chords from the total number of random permutations if they include at least one of each interval size. And it would be tedious to go through and check, but if you want, you can pause the video and ensure that for yourself. This last one is another patch that just ensures that somewhere in the structure of the chord there is a major or a minor triad in, I guess, contiguous pitches that are just right next to each other in the chord. So let's see, I thought there was an example back here that was easy. Yeah, so in this chord it starts with a C natural, then a C sharp, E, and a G sharp for a C sharp minor chord. So each of these has a triad in some inversion, major or minor, embedded in the chord. So let's do maybe just one more example. I'll switch this out. So now what I'm going to do is ask the patch to filter and allow chords only with a perfect fifth in the bass. And I should say that all of these for me are really important compositional and musical choices and tools, not maybe just research, but wanting to be able to use these musical objects that I'm kind of discovering in my music. And so the reason for this one, of course, is because I have moments in a piece where I want a sense of really being grounded harmonically, a really kind of strong sense of the harmonic series in the bass, and so it helps to have a perfect fifth as the lowest portion of the chord structure. The same might be said, for example, for an all-interval chord, where I want the harmony to be somewhat ambiguous or somewhat nebulous, and that's really effectively accomplished by making sure that there's at least one of each interval class contained in the chord. Okay, so this patch is done running. So it says it found 250 examples where there are fifths in the bass, and we can see, sure enough, we got a lot of C to G, more C to G, C sharp to G sharp. I'm sure there are more F to C. Yeah, we got a lot going on here. So yeah, these are just some helpful ways of discovering harmonies. So now I'll just show maybe how I use that practically when I'm working on a piece. So this semester I've been working on my thesis composition, and these patches that I developed kind of over the summer and through the fall semester were super helpful in kind of streamlining the brainstorming portion of my writing and in coming up with a structure for the work. So from the previous patch here, I primarily focused on symmetry, I believe, if I remember correctly, and so I came up with just a list of chords that I particularly liked working with. I liked the sonorities, and then just kind of grouped them by their interval class structures, and then rated them on how much I liked them, 4 or 3 stars. And then once I had done that, picked just a couple that I liked and came up with a brief chord progression that I thought worked nicely. And then after I had done that, I wanted to come up with a way of structuring the piece as a whole that would allow me a certain level of freedom. And so eventually what I decided on was something of a passacaglia-type harmonic progression where the roots would repeat in just a constant progression. And so I used that idea to basically come up with, oops, wrong one. Basically come up with this page, and this was super helpful for me. So these were the chords that we just saw in that previous patch window. And you can see on each of these systems, it's the same root progression from D, A, C sharp, F, D sharp, G, and then back to D. And so it cycles through those roots on each system, which was really handy because it meant that I could kind of jump around willy-nilly if I wanted. So for most of the piece, the harmony actually progresses in a straightforward manner. But there were some spots where I did want to like jump from the end of system 2 to system 5 or something and begin again here. And that was just tremendously helpful. The great part was I actually was able to use OpenMusic to make sure that the chord structures, the interval spaces that define each chord, and the way that those recur were offset from the roots. So it made this sense of the piece being kind of unified while also a little bit different. And yeah, just this was the result. Ended up with this piece, and this is the first sonority found on that very first page. So again, this is just to emphasize that working in OpenMusic can be a really practical way of composing, great way to develop harmonic material and resources, rhythmic material, work with some sonorities that you find interesting, and it can really be just a tremendous aid in the compositional process. So again, this has been great. I'm Peter. Look forward to working with you in the next couple of videos.